Okay, you lovely lot. So it's memories all alone in the... It's that time again, and we're on bad memories, aren't we, Jay?
We're on not bad ones, learning experiences.
No. Trust me, folks. I'm on a bad memory. This is like probably the worst match I've ever fished in the whole wide. Well, I didn't necessarily fish a bad match. It was just horrendous for me.
Have a lovely day fishing by any chance?
I didn't have a lovely day. I went, which will all be revealed shortly. I went to have a lovely day's fishing, Jamie, but
did you?
I didn't actually get a lovely day's fishing, mate. It was horrendous. But right, so I'm going to take you back to. It was, I'm going to say 2001. Might have been 2002. Kamasan, Rich, Kamasan for you. And it was the Matchman of the Year final. It was at Moorlands Farm.
Was it?
So Moorlands Farm back then, folks, and none of you have fished it. Obviously Grant Albert's got his now, and he's doing an awesome job. Back in the day, John Talbot had it then.
Was that was in the John Talbot days?
Yeah, but not like, you know, the real good John Talbot. This is like getting towards the end of it now. So the thing about Moorlands Farm is it's the first commercial that I ever fished, pretty much.
Right.
Back in me, what was I then? It was, I think Wizzo, no, it was Van der Nine Northern Select Youth. I was 11 years old, and it was the first commercial that I ever went to, because they used to have a North v South versus Midlands, and the Midlands team used to just annihilate us all the time, because they were basically Moorlands Farm regulars. The likes of little Dave Morris and I can't remember the blooming names. Matt Haynes. Remember Matt Haynes? Who used to fish Larford a bit. Matt Haynes.
Fireman Matt.
Danny Ashington. Yeah. Danny Ashington.
Was Kieran in their gang? Or did he...
Kieran was. He wasn't in the Moorlands gang, but obviously I'm going to come to him in a bit. He used to fish obviously Moorlands all the time, and they brought him in as a ringer.
Did they? Blank.
He was a bit older, so I don't think he qualified. He did the year I went for this practice, but he didn't qualify. So right, yeah. Anyway. So I was 11 years old, first commercial I ever fished, and I can remember. I'm going a bit off topic now, but I'm going to waffle anyway. It doesn't matter, does it? It's memory. I remember I've written about this. Ken Giles, legend that is Ken Giles, came and stood behind me, and I'd drawn, I'm going to say I was on peg 5 or 6 on the meadow pool, on the biggest one. So you know you've got that driveway through,
yeah,
and then you've got moors on your left hand side, meadow on your right. I was like halfway down that bank. I'm sure it's like
with the cafe bank sort of thing. That's
yeah. So
you have the silver pool behind you. You're on the bit with the little lake behind you.
Silver pool wasn't even there then, Jay.
You've got
silver pool. I'm sure it's moors on your left as you're driving down. You got obviously middle. You got bank, middle, moors, and then this other side you got meadow.
Yeah.
And I was on the right hand side. I'm sure it's peg 4 or 5. And bearing in mind, folks, I've never ever fished a commercial before. So the rigs that I had were for the bottom ponds at Pilsworth, which is basically bloodworm and joker fishing. I had like, it was like, wasn't even a 1 mil bristle, Jay. It was like a 0.06 mil of a bristle. Float. It was a jet ski float, wire all the way through. I didn't have a clue, did not have a clue whatsoever. And you just sort of like, Ken Giles is looking at me like, what is he on? Didn't have a clue with feeding, nothing like that. I was just sort of like, I think you could, no, it was squats then. It was like blasting squats out and all that, but that was right back in the day anyway. I'm waffling, but yeah, that was my introduction to carp fishing. Just horrendous, didn't have a clue what I was doing. So we'll come to the matching question then, which is the Kamasan Matchman of the Year final. So bearing in mind, obviously, we all know how these work, so I've waffled about them numerous times, 20 plus points. You get invited to the Matchman of the Year final, and what you had then was the England lads, they all got an invite. I mean, most of them had qualified anyway. The lads like Will Raisin, who I'll mention shortly, Des Shape, Alan, but you weren't allowed to fish Lehman Lake.
Connie will have been there, hasn't he, then?
You what, mate?
Connie and Stevie Gardner.
I don't know if Stu's in it. He might be, yeah, Stu's probably in it. But yeah, who else? Steve Emigray. So yeah, all them, they're all had invites, but they're all probably qualified anyway. So before we got to the final, I used to do a lot of travelling back then with Kieran Rich, proper legend of a bloke, unbelievable angler. Doesn't really fish as much now, but you know, he's just an awesome, you know, obviously
back
Kieran,
that was in Kieran's nearly his heyday, that wasn't it?
Ridiculously talented, and Moorlands was his like venue.
Yeah.
Again, like early 2000s, he wasn't really going as much then as what he was sort of like, I want to say, later. Yeah, mid 90s, even early 90s, mid 90s. It was just like all he ever used to go. He used to fish like 3 matches a day on there, pretty much. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous. And obviously, as I said, I've been doing a lot of travelling with him. So when we found out it was at Moorlands, we're like, yes, get ready time. Worms and casters.
Just What did you come in the canvas at? Had you won the canvas on this year?
I think I had. Yeah, if it was early 2000, it would have been.
Maybe it was the year that you won it.
It might have been the year that I can't remember. But it's really early 2000.
Yeah.
So obviously Bank Pool was in, Moors Middle and Meadow. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Right, before we even get to Moorlands, then I knew potentially it was going to be a rubbish day, because on the journey there in the morning, I ran a rabbit over, and then literally 5 seconds later I hit this bird, a magpie. I thought it just gone away, you know, just flew off, you know. It was all right. So I went to fill up with petrol that morning, and I can vividly remember this. It's like it was yesterday. So I was filling my car up with petrol, and then I went to pay, obviously, and then the bloke behind the counter said, "You got a bird hanging out of your car," and I'm like, "What?" I know we had a few drinks last night, but I don't remember. What are you on about, a bird hanging out of my car? And there's like two or three other people in this queue looking, and then there's just this magpie with its head dangling in the grill, and then the rest of its body dangling outside. I'm like, what is going off here? So obviously I had to go and deal with that. So then you're like, obviously, rabbit and a magpie, and they say, "No, what's going on?" So I made the trip to Moorlands, which is like hour and a half, hour and 40, something like that. And me and Kieran had this plan, worms and casters. There was still loads of like big skimmers in, loads of carp and that. We just thought, with the amount of pressure that's on it, because I don't think pellets weren't allowed then at Moorlands. You weren't allowed pellets at all.
Yeah.
And then they brought around like a pint of pellets, you know what I mean? So
remember, yeah.
Definitely pellets weren't allowed. Obviously, they were really strict on the bait limits as well. So I think, you know, sort of 3 or 4 pints of casters and maybe a kilo of worm is your limit, but they had to be washed off. Corn, meat, hemp, I'm going to say hemp was allowed, but yeah, boilies and pellets and things like that. Even ground bait weren't allowed back then. So we thought worms and casters. Kieran's always done well on it there. All these big skimmers in, we thought it was going to be hard.
Yeah.
We'll just target worms and casters. So yeah, come to the draw, we're like going into it, not had any practices or anything like that, just thought, yeah, we're going to smash it. Not fished it for a while, you know, year or 2 years, but whenever we've been on, we've always done well on worms and casters, folks. So, did the draw. I think Kieran drew first, and he drew horrendous. Down the bottom end, so I'm going to say high 20s, early 30s.
Up that far end.
Rubbish. But, you know, Kieran, the way he was, but well, still is now, make it happen anyway, you know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, it's all right, worms and casters, isn't it? Awesome day's fishing. And I drew 42, which was sort of like middle of like the right hand bank, because you're looking at the lake,
getting towards the good bit.
Yeah, it's all right. I've drawn there before. It's all right, you're going to get a few bites. I wouldn't say potentially winning it, or will I? Maybe. But all right, I thought it was a draw. So I was on 42. Who rocks up to my left? Andy Moores on 44.
Did he?
Yeah, Moores, he was on my left on 44. And then to my right on peg, bearing in mind, folks, on Meadow, the higher you get, usually the better the pegs.
Yeah.
So from like the middle of the lake up towards like the road end, if you like, towards, you know, sort of Moors Pool, that's usually the better pegs. So I'm on 42, Moores is on 44. And then to my right, Will Raisin. No, what is going on? And then to his right, so he'd have been on 38. Yeah, I was on 42.
Will's on 40.
40. Dean Smith was on 38. Now Dean, do you know
that was
Dean
Woodlands
Smith?
Dean, wasn't it?
Woodlands Dean Smith.
Yeah.
Awesome angler. You know, doing well at Whiteacres and everywhere. Hung out with the likes of Geldart and that. I don't know if I don't really see much of him anymore. He might still fish, but he was just ridiculous talent. He
could have won Camerson that year. That was in that era,
it might have been the
it?
year that he. No, because I don't think they've ever. Well, I'm not spoiling anything. I don't think he did, Jay. That's all I'm saying.
Right, yeah, I'm with it.
But awesome angler, phenomenal. Everything, but particularly meat fishing. So yeah, he'd drawn on 38, and I can't remember the other lads. I know Des Shit was on about peg 12 or 14. He always draws a flyer. Or he might have been on bank. No, I'm sure he was on our pool on 12 or 14. Decent
it's
peg.
On the wires nearly.
Mark Vanderkamp. It was either Mark Vanderkamp or Mickey Barlow under the wires on peg 58 on Meadow, like the peg. All the Census Garbly and all lot, they were all in it. You know, proper legends. I love them all to bits. Back then, learned so much off them. And then obviously you got Bank Pool in, the likes of who was on Bank Pool. I think Connie might have been on Bank Pool. There's some real good anglers on there as well. But our pool was one where we all wanted to be on. And I'm waffling, folks, but bear with me. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, we're setting up and having a bit of banter and all this, that, and the other. And it became apparent pretty early on that no one else had worms and casters. It was either meat or corn. Now, Dean Smith is awesome, as I say, all his fishing, but in particular meat fishing, and in particular meat shallow fishing. Ridiculous. Now, me and Kieran were like, no, they won't come shallow. Not going to come shallow. We're going to fish short and long. And it's pretty much the same depth from the top kit all the way. It's like, there's hardly any difference in it whatsoever. Or back then there wasn't. So I've set my gear up, you know, I've done a short kit, coupling in a bit of worm and caster as you do, you know, nice choppy and a bit of colour in the water, and then my long swim at 13 where this great big boom could potentially rock up. And I always remember it started off, you know, Will's done his business of like meat and corn 50-50, like he used to do a lot of that back then. And then Moses, I think Moses gone down like the corn route. He's not put meat into the start, but he's instantly gone down his edges. I'm like, edge fishing? No, no one's going to catch down the edge. Not a chance. So like, bearing in mind, 5 minutes in, I've not had a bite. I think Will's had 2 carp and Andy's had 2 carp as well. And then Dean's like pinging this meat out long at 13. He's gone straight long and he's had 2 or 3 carp. I'm like, I'm not bothered, you know, catch some skimmers, have a day's fishing and get some carp later on and smash everyone to bits. Not bothered in the slightest. Look down at Kieran, yep, he's sat like a gnome, he's not catching, but you know, there's a few people around him catching. So it gets like later and later on, sort of like hour in, I'd like 1 skimmer, 2 hours in, like 3 skimmers, still no carp. Moses on like 10 carp, Will's on like 14 or 15 carp. Dean Smith is on the same the other side of him, and I'm bearing in mind it usually gets better to my left, to my right, no, not a chance. And then there's this crowd slowly building behind like Will Raisin and Dean Smith because they're catching fish, you know what I mean? And I seen Kieran wander off. I'm like, where's Kieran going? It's like Camson British Open final, he shouldn't be wandering off. He like comes in because behind the rope, it's like, are you getting on, Andy? I'm like, not so good, mate, I'm getting smashed up. Brought the wrong bait, haven't we, mate? I'm like, I think so, mate. So he's gone and got a brew and like bought me a can of pop or anything, this, that and the other. And then we're like, what we're going to go, we're going to fast forward right to 4 hours in now, folks. And I'd had 1 carp. I very remember catching 1 carp and I'd probably had 6 or 7 skimmers. Literally could not get a bite anywhere. Andy's down the edge now, catching one side, coming down the other, catching another one the other side. Will's catching all his short at like 5 metres, just like ridiculous. Whack! Thump, 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 that's it. 4 motions, done, dusted. And then Dean's catching shallow meat. No one else is fishing meat. And then fast forward to like the end of the match, and obviously the scale started on peg 1, working all the way around. I think like £95, but there's loads of 80s coming out. Lots of like £70 coming out, and I think £95 was winning. I'm sure it was Des who was winning. Get round to Kieran, he weighs £17. And everyone, bearing in mind for everyone else has had like, you know, 50, 60, £70. And then working the way up my bank, I'm like, oh no, this is embarrassing. I just want to get in my car and just go home at this stage, folks. It's unbelievable. Gets to Dean Smith and he weighs £144, wins a match. Unbelievable. But the crowd was that big. They're like, wow, £144, and it only gets better to your left.
Yeah, what are these going to have?
Get ready for this. So like, Will weighs in a big 130, I'm saying. And the crowd's like, wowzers, what's Andy May going to have on this peg here then? I'm like, oh my God, he's only got 1 netting. What's he doing? He had one netting. So I weighed mine and I had £31.6. And then, and all the crowd's like that. Brought 1 bait, Andy? I'm like, yeah, maybe. And they get to Andy. Andy has like a low £100, and then it just gets like 90, 90, 90. I think there's another £100. I think Mickey's had it as well on that decent peg. And Dean obviously won the match. I think Des was 2nd, and then Will was 3rd, and I think Andy was 4th. So Kieran was rock bottom last in the whole match. So there's like, I think it was 61, 62 of us.
Yeah.
And I was next to last. So like this grand plan that we have of like taking worms and casters, like going to smash it to bits and catch loads of fish. It was just the wrong thing to do. And it just we just weren't expecting it. We thought we'd catch loads in it. But yeah, so a last and a next to last. So we just got it both completely wrong. And it proper did me head in for ages, that did.
Did it?
It just ruined me. I like, obviously on the phone to Daddy May on the way home, he's like, told you should have took meat and corn. I'm like, no he didn't, he said worms and casters. But it's just one of them when you have so much confidence in a bait, and back then I was like doing really well and it catching fish everywhere. Yeah. So I didn't really fish pellets or anything else.
You and Kieran were the worm gang, innit?
Oh mate, it was amazing. I like vividly remember like carrying these worms in like pillowcases and all this, that and the other, like 3 or 4 kilos at a time going in, like raw worms coming out, thump, 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 that'll do. But yeah, that match in particular just absolutely destroyed me. Proper did me head in. And having anglers like that, you know, around you, you can't make mistakes, and boy did I make a mistake. It was just ridiculous. So that is definitely the worst match I've ever had in my life.
Fair play. Won't be repeated.
Probably will be, to be fair. I am in a pellet gang, but I still like worms and casters.
Right, so we hope you are enjoying the video that you're watching. If not, have just watched. But what we'd also like you to see is the packages that we include for our more technical, informational stuff, where what we can bring to you is all we pretty much know about the technical side and our match style side of fishing. And what we have, you are, of course you are in this bit. We have 2 sides of things. We have the basic package that for $4.99, you can watch us fish live matches, a Q&A every month, and additional stuff from Matty Dawes with live matches and more technical stuff on his side. Or we have the all access package where you can literally see technical insights, live matches from us, but also some of the best anglers flipping on the planet. I mean, we treat it as 3 days coaching for us, and we go out and we show you what we're learning for anglers like Darren Cox, Andy Bennett, Des Ship, to name but a few. Well worth a look if you fancy having a little bit more fishing content to watch.